You're listening to Career Coaching with John, thoughtful approaches for lasting change. My name is John Fiolkowski, and welcome. Today we're going to talk about needs and working together to achieve them. Side note: all boys are into one of 6 things: planes, trains, dinosaurs, sports, superheroes, and space. I was, and still am, a planes and space guy. I remember there was one book, maybe it was mine, maybe it belonged to the school library, about the planets and space exploration. 2 things have stuck with me: an awesomely 70s plan to terraform Venus that I think might have involved nuclear weapons, and the story of the Voyager spacecraft. This one still amazes me. Now, what is it about those 2 crafts that is so interesting to me? Well, they were launched in the late 70s with a specific purpose: to photograph the planets as they passed them by. But long after their job was done, they just kept going. The Voyagers are still out there, the furthest human-made objects from Earth, still sending faint signals home across the dark. Now, that alone is remarkable. But on each of those spacecraft was something that I feel is even more remarkable: the golden records. These golden discs are carrying a message from Earth into deep space. Music, greetings, the sound of a kiss, the call of a whale. A time capsule of everything we thought was beautiful about being human, about our planet, launched into a silence that may never answer back. Now, what kind of sentimental fool would have thought of that? Now, the person that we chose to assemble this most ultimate mixtape was a man named Carl Sagan. Sagan is one of those people I feel like I know, even though, of course, I never met him. I can hear the sound of his voice, a calm, deliberate tone that made the universe feel like it was something within you, though I couldn't tell you much more about him. Oddly enough, I don't remember Sagan from my childhood. The space guy I watched with my dad was Jack Horkheimer, a portly man with a mustache who slid down a superimposed Milky Way, explaining the stars over cosmic synth music and reminding us to keep looking up. It's a pretty cool effect for 1989. He probably taught me more about space than anyone else did. But Sagan, he reaches me as an adult. Because even though he called it science, he made it feel like a universal human need, a longing to learn and discover. He was quoted about Voyager: "The spacecraft will be encountered and the record played only if there are advanced spacefaring civilizations in interstellar space. But the launching of this bottle into the cosmic ocean says something very hopeful about life on this planet. The human need to reach out, to touch the heart or mind of someone we may never meet." And I think that's what we're all doing here in life in one way or another. And whether it's a podcast or a job application, a first date, or we're just trying to be understood by the people around us, we're all sending out our own version of a golden record, hoping someone hears it, hoping someone figures out how to play the thing, hoping someone understands who we are, and wondering, how can we work together to pull it all off? I see, that's the need I want to talk about today. This is Career Coaching with John, Episode 15, Your Path in Life, Part 1. I'm John Fiolkowski. Stay with us. Name?
Let's start again because I just moved in the camera for like something silly.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I mean, everything is editable. How do you pronounce your last name is my big question.
So that'll be Volentir.
Volentir?
That's how, yeah, Actually, that's exactly how you say it because there's the Romanian way of saying it and then there's how I say it to English people. So if I'm in England, I would say my name is Luca Volentir. But if I'm in Romania and someone asks me, then I would say my name is Luca Volentir.
I should probably fill you in on what I'm doing here. One of the struggles I have as a new podcaster is momentum. I am all by myself here. As soon as I stop, everything stops. I find that really discouraging sometimes. It's lonely. But then again, that's the kind of push I asked for. I need to find some people to work with. And in doing that, I came across a podcast called Path in Life. I reached out to the host in hopes of doing some kind of collaboration, and it turns out we had something really big in common. We both want our podcast to take us somewhere. We just don't know exactly where that is yet. This turned out to be a much bigger project than either of us anticipated. What follows is what came out of that collaboration.
And what do you do for work?
So for work, I graduated about a year ago from University of Bath, which is just in the same city I live in, and I did computer science. So now my job is I'm a software programmer. So I work for a company in the same city in healthcare, and I've been doing that for a year now.
Yeah. What got you into software?
What got me into software? A number of things. I think it goes back to Romania.
We're going to get to know Luca quite well over the next couple weeks. As part of our collaboration, we're going to try to do some coaching together. In part 1, what you're hearing today, you're going to get to know him. In part 2, we're going to look at what struggles are getting in his way. Part 3, we're going to start doing some exercises to figure out what makes him tick. And part 4, well, I don't know yet. We haven't got there.
It goes back to Romania because you see, so I went to elementary school, high school in Romania. And the system in Romania is, I don't want to say very, very different than the one in the United Kingdom, but the areas on which people tend to focus on are vastly different. And I'm going to go on a little story here. So feel free to stop at any point if you feel like I'm not giving you the answer.
Take your time. I can always edit out the boring stuff. Don't forget that. It's a podcaster's power. Anyways, go on.
That's okay. That's so true. So in Romania, you grow up and you do a lot of subjects. You do a lot of subjects at school. And once you graduate, to say so, from elementary school, you go into what we call high school. And in high school, I don't know the exact numbers, but from what I've seen, and I'll give you a more specific example in a second, around 90% of students, they go to study something that is more mathsy related. They wouldn't go to study something that's art related, music related, or anything that's sort of labeled creative in, I guess, in the United Kingdom, for example.
I've not given Luca any rules. He can approach each question however he wants. He's been given a couple of assignments, and we'll get to them later. I have, however, given myself a couple of rules. I'm not allowed to give him any advice. That's first and foremost. I don't want to be the old guy telling the kids what to do. I also want you, dear listener, to do the same. Stay with him.
And to give you the specific example, so you've got, in high school, for each class, you've got around 6 other cohorts of students. And out of 6 cohorts of students, you've got 5 which are focused on what we call the mathematical subjects, which include, for example, computer science. And then you've got the odd one out, which focuses more on, not the creative side, but more on literature.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying the system in Romania is so different than the one in the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, you've got more options in terms of like what you want to study, and not most kids, but a good part of everyone I've met, especially through my job, right? Because people in my job, they are adults, some of them have kids, and I talk with them and they say, all right, I think my kid's gonna do something that's, I don't know, music related or artsy related. Now,
Yeah.
That's important. That's important because, as I was saying, you were asking about how I got into computer science and how I got to do the job. Because everyone in Romania goes on and studies something that's very mathematical, and one of the subjects being computer science, I was say, forced to do that as well. So I did that for 4 years, and it was an interesting subject, to be honest. The first 2 years when I started doing computer science, it was quite interesting. It was something new, something I had never done before. And towards the end of high school, things started getting a bit more difficult.
Luca's 24. He moved to the UK to go to school when he was 19. I can't remember if he told us that. But he did tell me earlier. Pay attention to these details, though. They do matter.
And so I did that. 2 years I really enjoyed it. And then towards the back of high school, I started to enjoy it less and less. Equally, it wasn't something I was going to rule out as a future career, just because looking at who I was in high school and what I was focusing on and what I thought my future might be like, I didn't feel like I was passionate enough to go study something that was business related. I didn't feel passionate enough to study something that's more mathematical related, even though I was really good at maths when I was in high school.
Okay.
Regardless, I didn't want to study maths after high school. I didn't want to study business. I didn't want to study marketing. So honestly, the option there was quite obvious, because in 2020 when I graduated, software was still something that was really cool to do. It was something that was still up and coming, and especially in Romania.
By and large, I haven't done a whole lot of editing for this show. I took out some ums and stutters. Sometimes you can hear my pen scratching as I write notes, but I did get rid of most of that once I learned how to do that. We both tend to repeat ourselves once in a while. I took that out as well.
And so I never ruled out computer science. Now, what also pushed me to do computer science was my parents. But it wasn't in the sort of way, they didn't push me, my dad and my mom, they didn't push me to do computer science because they wanted themselves to do computer science. There's always this narrative of parents trying to live through their kids. It wasn't like this in my case. Yeah. It was, I kind of already knew that computer science was a more realistic path for me, number one. Number two, my parents also pushed me in that direction and sort of explained, hey, look, here are all the benefits that you could have if you did that. Here are all the benefits if you try to maybe study something else. And here are the drawbacks of maybe not doing some of these things, or maybe not doing some of the other things. And part of that was also the fact that deep down, and again, with my parents by my side, we always knew I wasn't going to stay and study in Romania for university.
Yeah.
I always knew I was going to apply to go somewhere else. Now, where that somewhere else was, it was probably either Holland or the United Kingdom, because they were the biggest ones out there to which I have access to.
Yeah.
So I chose computer science. I was happy with my choice in terms of I knew that was the one path that would allow me to do more, and I'll explain that in a second. So I did that. Went on that in 2019 and applied to a bunch of university, and got accepted to a number of them. And then I ended up in Bath in the United Kingdom, to the University of Bath, and went on to study computer science for 4 years, and then graduated. And then here I am doing computer science, being a software developer for a company in Bath.
Would you say it's partially by interest, partially by default? You know, like this was the one that made sense, and so that's kind of where you went. Maybe it wasn't based on a passion or an interest. It was more like, this seemed like it all struck me as really practical.
Yes, yeah. John, that's a really good observation there. I like to think that I'm a practical person. Whenever I make a decision, I try to make it based on logic, and I try to make it based on whatever feels right and whatever feels realistic. So right. You're absolutely right. It was a realistic choice, because I thought to myself even throughout university and also before I actually said, okay, let's do computer science, I thought to myself, well, if I do computer science, it will give me a number of things. It will give me some technical understanding of how different things work. Now, from a development point of view, that was something that was really useful because you can always take that and apply it in different areas. So if you understand how an application is built, or if you understand how a platform is built and how these things might be used and how to test if they're being used correctly or not, then you can take that into any other field. Whereas if you go and study, I guess what I am starting to say out loud, it might not make any more sense to me, but if you go to marketing, for example, and you study marketing, you can only do that. The things you learn during a marketing course, I believe, and this is where I might be wrong because I haven't done a marketing course, you can't really take them and apply them somewhere else. Yes, you can take marketing and apply it in a different industry and it will work. But from the point of view of, right, I'm a software developer, let me try and do something else. Let me try and maybe work not as a software developer. You can still take some of the things you've learned from the technical space and apply them somewhere else, more so than with any other degree, just because it offers you that flexibility of right, you understand how some of these things work. And most of the things nowadays, they are very technical. You've got AI. Most people, they claim to know, right, I know how AI works. I've done a course on it. You don't know how AI works. you haven't.
No, I know the theory.
You know the theory. You know the theory, but if you want to know...
I want to point something out here because I do want to cut him off. I do want to cut him off and correct him. I have to choose not to. That's really important for me, and it's important for the show that I don't stop him from saying what he's saying, because I don't think it's true. But in his mind, it is true. And we're trying to uncover his truths before we start, influencing them.
It's not enough to know the theory, is my point. My point is, if you know the theory and the under-the-hood mechanisms, then that's a success story. But if you just know the theory without knowing the legwork that helps support that theory, then you don't have the legwork. So how can you support yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I have a history degree.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I have a background in sales and marketing and hospitality, and like that's my education's in history and geography and marketing. And I've never really used them for anything. I've often believed like this is probably what I'm doing now is probably the most relevant to my education that I've ever done in my entire life. And it's because I do honestly believe like some professions, like if you're going to be a software developer, you better know something about computers. You better know how to do that. If you're going to be a brain surgeon, you better know how the brain functions. Like, you got to know that. Beyond that though, it's a question of like, how can you use your skills and apply them to an idea, and how can you actually make that idea come to life? But that's just another way of looking at the whole thing. Now that you've been doing this for a year, now that you've graduated, you've been employed, you're working, how do you feel about the work that you're doing? How does it resonate with you? How's it functioning?
I'll be honest. How does it resonate? And the question you just asked me has just made me remember something I was going to say earlier. So, How do I feel about the work? I'm not passionate about computer science, because that's what you were asking earlier.
Yeah.
I'm not passionate necessarily about computer science. I chose it because it seemed like the most realistic and the most beneficial thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do I feel about the work? It's all right. I'm not as passionate as someone who really likes computer science or someone who really likes developing an application might feel. And the reason for it is very much, and I believe at this point in time, I don't enjoy it as much as others because I'm not building something for myself. I'm building for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And me, that doesn't feel right.
What would you call passionate? What does passionate look like to you?
Passionate, the very first thing that comes to mind is I wake up in the morning and I really look forward to do the job I'm about to do. Yeah. And then that continues on, because I have that. Don't get me wrong, I have that, depending on the work that I'm doing on the day-to-day job. But for me to be passionate about it, that needs to continue throughout 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., up until midnight.
Right.
All right. If the clock hits 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. and I'm about to end to finish for the day, and I feel like I really want to go home, then I'm not passionate.
Okay. So there are aspects of it that bring your passion out. It's not necessarily when you talk about aspects, is that like a project that you can identify with, a project that you can take ownership of, a project that define that part of it's the aspects.
Yeah, I think sometimes at work you might have boring projects, or you might have exciting projects, and those exciting projects could be, hey, you have to create something new from scratch. Whereas the boring stuff could be, hey, you have to fix this thing up because it's broken, or you need to improve some part of the system because it's very old.
Right.
Now, to me, I don't want to sit here and say, hey, I like to work on all the shiny new things, because that's not necessarily the case. I like to work on a variety of stuff, but what I find myself when I find myself in situations where the project I'm working on is not interesting enough, or is not exciting enough, because it requires a lot of. I'll give you the specifics, because this will help a lot.
Yeah.
The company I work for has been around for 25 years. Okay.
Okay.
Great company. Don't get me wrong. If they ever watch this, they're a lovely company.
They are.
They are a lovely company. And I say that to everyone who I meet, all the students who are looking for internships. What is also true with these sort of companies and any other companies, that you're 25 years old. You've got a system that is 25 years old, right? Yeah. It's old, okay? You started we're 2025 now, so if you started around 2000, then you were using technologies that were around that time. Okay, so you kind of you've bound yourself to some technologies that are quite old, and you're in a situation where you have to rely on something we call in software as legacy code.
Yeah,
and different companies have this, and when you work with legacy code, you're kind of chained to doing some things when you know the new technologies can help you improve massively. So that's why it's exciting to work for a startup, right? Because they use the new technologies and they want to make everything fast, and they've got nothing to worry about, and you've got literally, there's no limits to it. But when you work for a company that's been around for decades, then that becomes a bit harder.
No, it's interesting. I know I always think my favorite jobs have been the ones where there's been the most chaos. And the reason is because it gives me a place to put my stamp on it. Whereas the most established businesses that I've ever worked for, because everybody's already seen that, they've done that, we've got a method, we know it works. Whether or not it could work better is really beside the point. We know this works. And so we're going to stick to it. So you're using, like I said, legacy code. My cases, we weren't coding, but we were using legacy processes. We might have a form that we're filling out, that the form was written 10 years ago and it's just been photocopied 400 times. And I'm not being glib here. I'm serious. Like that is something that we did. And you're like, but half the stuff is irrelevant. Half the stuff is just slowing us down. Half the stuff is just making life more difficult or ruining the experience for our customers, or all of those things. But we do it because, well, this is the way we've always done it. It does take away a lot of my motivation, but that's the way I function. That's the way I operate. For me, being able to pivot, change things, find a better way, like actually examine that root cause is important.
Yeah, I think you said everything I said.
Yeah.
With much less words and in like a couple of minutes. Yeah. I took 10 minutes to say what you said in 10 seconds. Yeah.
So you've got the professional world, and that is comfortable. I can't think of any other way of putting it. It makes sense. It's comfortable. Would you call it comfortable? I mean, to me, it feels comfortable. It feels like this is going to pay me. The company is solid. They're not going to go wrong. I'm in a relatively supportive environment. This is good.
John,
Yeah.
this is not good. This is dangerous.
Okay.
This is very dangerous.
Right.
This is very dangerous, and that's a perspective I have on life when it comes to careers.
Yeah.
It's dangerous because it's comfortable. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's dangerous because it gives you a salary and it gives you a specific time. You have to go to work between 8 and 9 and then finish around 4 or 5. Okay. And then you can have the rest of the night for yourself, and you've got the weekends to yourself. It's comfortable, right? It gives you salary, and totally. every 3 months or every 6 months or whenever, you can go and say, hey, here's what I've done to improve the company. Here's what I've done to add value. I think I deserve a raise. And that creates another level of comfort. It improves your comfort, right? And we're going to talk about this probably later on. But for example, I started my podcast, right?
Yeah.
I started my podcast as an experiment, as a project, as something I thought I would enjoy, and I am enjoying it. And even though I'm at the very beginning, the opportunities I've had off the back of it and everything I've had to do for it to build it up have put me in situations that I didn't think would happen now. And that's really exciting. Now, going back to what I said a couple of minutes ago, it's dangerous. It's dangerous because it keeps you there, right? You're going to go from one job to another, and then another. You're going to get a salary increase every other year, and you're going to feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable with it. Because that's not what I want to do. When you asked me earlier, am I excited about my work? I'm not as excited as someone else who's loving computer science or who likes to be comfortable like that, because ultimately, if I'm going to put in so much work, 8 hours a day, then I might as well put that work in for myself. So there's a book I wrote. No, there's a podcast I listened to just recently. It's called My First Million. And in that episode, one of the hosts, he talked about 4 steps that can help you get to 1 million, because that's the name of the podcast, My First Million, right? And one of the steps, step number 3, was you're never going to get rich if that's your goal. You're never going to get rich if you work for a company that gives you salary. You're going to get rich if you get equity in the company. And you only get equity if you provide so much value for the company that you're part of, that you get to own a piece of that company. Okay? And that's when passion comes in. That's when you get excited, because then you no longer get a paycheck from the company. You get a paycheck from everyone else working in the company. You get a different sort of incentive. I don't want to work for a company ultimately. Yeah.
No, I get it. It took me a long time to realize that, honestly. But when I got to the point where I was saying, I love working, but I don't want a job. And I actually said that to my last boss. I said, I love working, I love being here, but I don't want a job. And the reason I don't want a job is because I don't get anything it's not mine. I'm not connected to it. When I went off on my own, and the first time that I got paid for my work, I couldn't believe that someone was paying me to do this. And it's still a rush to get money for something that I've created. And that is a motivating force that you don't get in a job, even though, because you're removed from it. Did I create this, or am I just putting time in? And the longer you stay in a job, the more it becomes about the time, the more it becomes about what you've invested in the time, rather than what you've invested in the business or the project or the idea. And when you want to get paid for your ideas rather than your time, as I do, then you're put in that constant cycle of, well, am I doing time, or what's happening? Who's paying me? What's going on? the best advice I ever got, I think I was probably your age, but I never really figured it out, was somebody said, you need to put yourself in a position of need. Always keep yourself in a position of need, because as soon as you get comfortable, you will be comfortable. I don't think either of us, this would have been my friend and I were talking to this guy. He was buying something off of him. And I don't think either of us really understood that, what that meant. And he was saying he had made a lot of money doing like flipping properties, I think. And he said, as soon as I feel like I'm okay, I got to go back. I got to keep doing it. I got to go buy something else. I got to do something new. Because when I'm okay, I can put my feet up. I can relax. I can let all those bad habits come back out. And where will I be then? This kind of one-off conversation with a guy that I met once and never spoken to again. I don't remember his name. I don't remember anything about him other than roughly where he lives. It's stuck with me. Put yourself in that position of need. But yeah, I never got to put it into action.
Yeah, because if you're not hungry, then you're comfortable. And once you get comfortable, you're not only in that position of need, you just aren't. You get home, you spend your night watching Netflix. You wake up, you go to work, you spend your night watching Netflix. You go to the weekend, you might meet with some friends, and then you spend your night watching Netflix. Let me ask you this, because the difference between you and I, one of the differences between you and I is that you just said you have been paid by people to do work for them.
Yeah.
And you've also been an employee yourself at some point, as you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How much more work, how much more time, and how much more passion, energy, and time did you put in working for the client that was paying you versus a company paying you?
I mean, an actual time elapsed. The same, maybe less. And this is kind of the way my brain works. In actual quality of work, they don't touch. So I have big attention problems. Like that's probably some undiagnosed ADHD or attention, or learning disability or something like that, right? But like in terms of being able to sit and focus and do something, it's always been a challenge for me. Working for myself, doing my thing, doing something that I'm personally motivated by, that goes away in a very big, it goes away. Not entirely, but it goes away. So, I think this proves your point. Like, I would put in 8 hours to achieve 1 hour. Now I put in 2 hours and achieve 4. It's very different. The thing that I kind of reflect on, and I think this is, another part of the difference between you and I is like, I think I'm like probably 20 years older than you. I did put that kind of energy into other people's businesses. And I remember that. I remember being like 25 and taking total ownership over someone else's restaurant, but it was never mine. And then that conclusion that kept coming back over and over and over was, they could take it away from you and they will take it away from you. And in the end of the day, all I'm really going to be getting is this money. And they may thank me, but at the end of the day, there's no equity, there's no ownership, there's no anything. And eventually it will just break your heart. And it's very hard having your heart broken by a job that you've invested emotionally into. And so it's funny when you talk to somebody who's your age, and I don't think you've ever had your heart broken by a job. Doesn't sound like it.
Nope.
And versus somebody who has, because most of my clients are around my age and they have had their heart broken by a job. The way that you're constructing this is almost to say, I know that's going to happen. But the question is, to me now, like, can we avoid that in your life? Can you understand what a career heartbreak is going to look like and feel like before it ever happens? Can you make that heartbreak work for you? Can you be resilient enough to move through it? And can we do that long before you end up in a position where a lot of my clients end up, which is to say, okay, what does your metrics of success look like? Well, I really just want a 9-to-5 job. I really want to be comfortable. I really don't want to do this anymore. And then you go, well, how is that even remotely inspiring for you or for anybody else?
To be honest with you, John, I think there's two things here. Number one, what you just said, I think some people enjoy it. And that's the vast majority, okay? Not everyone wants, and that's absolutely fine. Now, regarding to your second point, which is very interesting, how can we avoid that heartbreak? Well, I might have an answer for it. I don't know if it's the answer. I don't know if it's the right answer. I don't know. It's just my approach. Okay, so it all comes down to intention. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And whether you like it or not, everyone is intentional. We just don't realize it. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
You and I, for example, we both started a podcast. Okay? We're being very intentional with why we're doing a podcast. We're being very intentional with the people we select for it. And we're being very intentional with then how we edit it and how we post it and then how we market it. We're very intentional. Look at social media. Everyone who's on social media who has a profile or not, or who's got pictures on their profile or not, that's an intention, whether or not they realize it. Now, Why am I saying intention so many times? Because because if you go into a 9-to-5 and you put a lot of work and effort in, expecting that, right, 5 years down the line, everyone's gonna look at me and it's gonna be like, oh my God, that person, Greg, he's put so much work in the company, he deserves so much. And then 5 years later, Greg goes into the office and he gets laid off. Or Greg goes into the office and he finds out he didn't get the promotion he wanted to get or he was in line to get.
Yeah.
And then Greg gets his heart broken. And the reason for it, I believe, is because Greg didn't understand his intention. He probably went in for 5 years thinking, I'm going to do so much for his company, but he didn't have a goal. He didn't have a plan. Mm-hmm. What was his why? Okay. Now, I read an interesting book recently called Ego is Your Enemy. Okay. And one of the things that I took away from the book was, if you're being intentional and if you're up and coming and if you're young, the best way to learn is to surround yourself or to go work for someone who's really good at what they do. Yeah. And the specific phrase that was used in the book was, if you clear the path for the person you are working with, if you're clearing the path for them, then ultimately you are in control of that path. And what it means to me is, if, say, for example, I go in and I spend the next 5 years trying to make my company's life much easier, trying to add a lot of value, knowing that with the intention that I'm going to go in and do all of that because I want to learn from that company, then 5 years down the line, if something happens with the company and I get my heart broken, I know that was never the goal. The goal was to learn. Yeah. So if something happens, and things happen, okay, then I know that my 5 year plan was never wasted because I went in trying to understand how the company worked, trying to understand how systems work, trying to understand how building a company of whatever size works like, okay? Unlike Greg, that went in, spent a lot of time building up the company and adding a lot of value, but not having a plan.
Yeah.
So it all comes down to intention and your goal, your plan. If you don't have a plan and you're not intentional, then you're going to get your heart broken.
I would argue that you'd get your heart broken regardless. But it's more about, for whom are you getting it broken for? You know, like, I think you can take on any job and be entrepreneurial about it. I don't think you have to start your own business in order to be an entrepreneur.
100%.
The question is, are you working for them or are you working for yourself with them as your client? And even if you're working for the government, which is, say, like the most bureaucratic, obvious, easy, safe place to be, are you functioning as though they are your client and that you're trying to maximize your own value out of it? And do you know what that value is? Do you know what your goals are? Do you understand why you're doing something like this? Or are you functioning in the sense of like, well, I'll just do what I'm told. And when you are maximizing your own value, you are developing a resilience that you won't have when you're just doing what you're told. Because the resilience is really what gets you through the heartbreak that is, in my eyes, inevitable.
I don't really understand the heartbreak thing then, because
You don't.
I think I don't understand, because and that's just the way I say it. That's just my belief. Knowing that if I have intent and I have a plan and a goal, then whatever happens at the end, I will know that I didn't do it for those reasons. I did because I had the intention of doing X, Y, Z, and then I had a plan, and that was my goal. The goal was to, learn a bunch of things. The goal was never to get a big salary. The goal was never to get a promotion. The goal was very much to learn. And how I go about that was the plan and the intention and the goal.
Well, no, I think that's good. I mean, I think that's if that's the right place for you to be. And again, like the path, all of these paths is not necessarily like what my path is not your path, right? And I'm not here to put my values and experience on you. That's not what a coach does, right? That's my hope is that through all of this, you're going to start to see like, all right, is there something that I am saying that I believe in that it's holding me back, that is restricting my viewpoint? So it's like when I talk about the heartache thing, I think a heartache or heartbreak with work is inevitable, mostly because that's what I've seen out of most people. The question though is always to me, like, what is your resilience? And that's what I'm hearing out of you right now. Whether you think, all right, how can you be heartbroken if, to me, it's like, how do you get over the rejection? How do you get over the heartbreak? And the strength that you're building with yourself by building those goals, by building that intention, by walking into something with a purpose is what will get you through the inevitable heartbreak that will happen sometime in the next however, right? The moment in which you've put so much work into something and it just doesn't work, it doesn't happen, or it doesn't anything. Like those are things that happen. In the fact that it hasn't happened to you yet, or maybe it'll never happen at all. I don't know. Again, but I think it will, and I think that we can build a strength of resilience. And you were so far along, and you have such a clear mind about what you're going to do. This means that you are going to be far more resilient in the future, as opposed to somebody who's just stumbling.
Welcome back to Career Coaching with John. That was Georgia's own Alex Grohl with One Step Ahead. I don't know if that's Georgia the state or Georgia the country, but I'm keeping this vibe synthy today. Anyway, while I have your attention, I want to thank everyone for listening to the show. While we were recording this episode, the free app I was using to record our call glitched, and we nearly lost the whole thing. That's the downside to using free stuff. Were it not for the fact that we actually videoed ourselves independently, we might not have had an episode at all. The subscriptions to software, to music, the equipment that we use, well, it gets very expensive. And so the best way that you can keep this show alive is through your subscribing, sharing the episodes, and if you're feeling rich, become a friend of the show on Patreon, which at $5 a month can really go a long way to helping me get the proper software I need to put on a good show. Visit johnfielkowski.com/podcast to learn more about how you can support it. And now, back to the program. I hope the last hour has given you an idea of who Luca is and what he believes in. I have just introduced the concept of the career heartbreak to him. To me, the idea of a career heartbreak is when all your hard work either fails or is suddenly taken away from you. In Luca's mind, this is merely a mindset question. He's clearly defined himself as a man of intention. He functions with the intent of growing and learning. Comfort is a 4-letter word. I have to say, I'm very impressed with his mindset up to now.
I think, John, actually, I think I'm starting to understand this heartache you're talking about. And even though I haven't experienced that in my job, I feel like to some degree I'm experiencing this with the podcast. Like, for example, the podcast I'm building, right? It's still very much at the beginning, okay? I haven't figured out, for example, the guest experience. Okay, and every time I have a guest on, and every time I have a conversation with them, at the end of it, I get feedback from my friends, from the people who watch it, and obviously, I think the heartbreak or the heartache I'm experiencing in those moments is that I'm putting so much effort in, and the results are not yet what I think they should be.
Yeah.
And then I realize, well, it's a learning curve. These are the things that I've done that haven't worked. Let me try and do them differently.
Yeah. What are your expectations in yourself?
As a
podcaster?
Okay. That's a really good question. I don't have an answer prep for it, so it's very much going to be something that is just going to come out.
Good. Now we're getting started.
I think my expectations are very much... I'll give you the why of the podcast, so I can then talk about expectations. So the reason I started up the podcast, which is called Path in Life, I'm watching all of these podcasts left and right. One of the biggest ones I've watched is obviously Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO. Now, Diary of a CEO, for example, is a really good podcast. Yeah. Okay, Stephen invites people who are very much experts in their own domains, and they come in and they have a conversation, and all these experts and business people and CEOs, they add value to you, the person watching it, through their experience. Now, the reason why I started the podcast and the whole mission of the podcast is that everyone, regardless of who they are or what they do, everyone has got a unique perspective and experience that can add value to others. Mm-hmm. For example, who's to say that you, John, don't have value to add to others, okay? Just the fact that you and I are having this conversation right now, it's helping me see things, and I'll give you feedback right here and now. I didn't think about heartbreak in terms of career and the professional life up until now. I didn't internalize it. I might have felt it every now and again, like I mentioned with the podcast, but no one ever said it to me out loud.
Yeah.
That's some feedback to you.
Thanks.
And you're welcome. And so that's the mission of the podcast, trying to get the everyday person to share value to their own unique experience and how they see things. So that's the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. And can I just ask you, what was the question you were asking? Because I don't want to go off a tangent here.
Well, tangents are good sometimes in the show, by the way. But what are your expectations for yourself with this podcast?
Okay, so the number one expectation I have in myself is the fact that I want to be able to sit down with anyone, and I want to be able to have a natural conversation with them, and I want to be able to put them in a position where they share that value.
Mm-hmm.
I have found it quite hard in some of the episodes to get the guest in a position where they can do that. And I guess that's where the heartbreak happens. That's where I get a bit sad because I wasn't able to do that for them. Because ultimately, I know that they have got value that they could give to others. And everyone has got it. And everyone who says, oh, I don't want to be on a podcast because I feel like I don't have anything interesting to say, that's a lie. Okay? I believe with my whole heart and body, that's a lie. And when I sit down with someone and I'm not able to do that, that's when I become a bit sad. And then I try to do a better job next time. So my number one expectation from myself is sit down with someone and be able to put them in that position where they can share that value with others.
And you see that as your responsibility first and foremost.
I think so. I think obviously I could sit here and say it's a two-way street, and it's as much on me as it is on the guest. But equally, I think it's 100% on me. I think it's 100% on me because of two reasons, and I'll go with the first one because that's the more realistic one, maybe. It's 100% on me because the everyday person, okay, and this will come out maybe a bit bad, but I don't. That's my opinion. The everyday person is not media trained. Okay, no. The everyday person has got an average salary and sometimes can barely afford to buy a house. Okay, the everyday person has not got the same experiences that an expert in its own domain, in their own domain, has got. Okay, they don't have the same experience as a CEO. They don't have the same experience as someone who has been battle tested so many times. So I believe it's 100% on me to put them in the best situation possible for them to give that value.
Are you media trained?
Am I media trained? No. I think being media is quite an interesting way of. It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting idea, and the people who are, you can definitely see them.
Oh,
but no,
sure.
I'm not media trained.
Yeah.
If I was, it would probably be easier to get that to get the person to come on the podcast and share that value. And I would probably do a better job if I was media trained. Well,
you're not a journalist. I mean, that's the first thing. I mean, neither am I. How do you resolve that? Like, if you're looking at so I've listened to the episode, or I've watched my episode in your case. How do you now prepare the next person? Or how would you?
So this is what I'm trying to do at the moment. Okay,
yeah.
So it starts very much from listening to the podcast, understanding how the conversation went.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, what I mean by it is I want to be able to make the conversation so that it flows naturally. Okay, I don't want to make the conversation feel like it's an interview. I want it to be a conversation, and that's one of the things I failed, and I have failed in all of the episodes. I think it doesn't feel like a conversation. It feels more like an interview where I sit down with a person and I ask them a bunch of questions, and I sense that sometimes, and I'm trying to minimize that as much as possible. How?
Mm-hmm.
The answer to the how is by looking at the questions I ask, number one, and trying to see, well, how can I phrase this better? Or how can I better place these questions so that I get a better result? So that's number one. That comes down to the question. The questions I'm asking. Number two, to make the conversation flow more naturally, I have to get out of my own head. So I've released 12 episodes so far. I would say in the first 8, maybe even 9 episodes, I was very much in my own head. And what I mean by that is I was never listening. I wasn't fully listening to the guest, which was the one thing you should actually never do. You should absolutely listen to the guest.
Yeah.
Every time the guest was speaking, I was thinking, right, what can I ask the guest next so that the conversation is going in the right direction. Or I was always trying to remember the question I had written down on a piece of paper so that I can ask them next. And that didn't allow me to be present in the conversation and listen to them. So I'm trying to get out of my own head. And I'm trying to prepare less, if that makes any sense. Because I have found that the more I prepare, the worse the experience I have. And I feel like the worse of the experience I have, then that translates to how I interact with the guest.
Okay. I'll get the script together. All right. We have reached the hour point in our show, and I'll let you get back to work now. And by this stage, Luca and I have been talking for pretty close to 2 hours. An hour that's been recorded and an hour that we did 3 weeks ago or so. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to notice some real opportunities. I'm also starting to notice some trends that might be holding Luca back. I'm not going to point them out to him just yet, though. I want Luca to figure them out on his own. I also want you to think about what they might be. I've got to say, though, it's pretty cool to work with someone with such clear intention, who doesn't hold any bitterness whatsoever. Luca is the embodiment of the aspirational goals I put out in my first couple episodes. Intention, entrepreneurship. I wasn't that upbeat when I was 24, I'll tell you that now. I've also got to say something else. I'm starting to get inspired. Well, not just by our collaboration, but also about what I'm doing here. I've noticed something about myself in the last 6-7 months I've been recording this show. I'm less bitter than I used to be. I'm glad you're doing this with me. I'm glad we're doing this together. Thank you for listening to Career Coaching with John, and this was episode 15, Your Path in Life Part 1. I will be releasing the rest of this series as they are finished to the Friends of the Show members on Patreon. But otherwise, you'll have to wait on my usual schedule of 1 to 2 weeks per episode, so stay tuned. Visit johnfielkowski.com/podcast to learn more about how you can support the show, to see the show notes, music credits, all that jazzy stuff. I want to thank Luca Volentir for his time and enthusiasm. You can find his podcast, Path in Life, on Spotify. He also has a very active Instagram at Path in Life. Today's musical guests were Pruk Prak and Lily Ben in the intro, Alex Grohl in the intermission, and this cosmic tune you hear in the background is by Tokyo Rift, who's playing us out with a tune called Mulholland Drive. As always, if you know somebody who needs to hear this message, please make sure to share this episode and subscribe to the show. This was Career Coaching with John. I'm John Fielkowski. Now go enjoy your day and